Welcome back to House Education on January 28th. We're going to have a bill introduction. This is H779. We have the bill sponsor, and the bill is also signed on to by two members of our committee, Representative Harpel and Representative Brady. But for now, we'll turn it over to Representative Chapin to kind of talk to us about it, and then we'll have a walkthrough with Legislative Council. Welcome to the House Education Committee.
Here, I'm Ella Chapin. I represent East Montpelier and Middlesex. And I am glad to be in your room. Thanks for all the work you're doing on education. So just to give a little explanation of where this bill came from, my thoughts, and some of the information I collected as I brought it to you. The impetus for this bill really started with my own personal experience with my own teenager in the high school U32, where both my kids have gone, do go, where both my husband and I both went to high school. And the sort of impact that early college had on particularly my now freshman in college's experience last year as a senior in high school. But it also came as I sort of explored that with other legislators and school officials and others. It grew clear to me that there's like a really big challenge in certain high schools with the early college program, and that it has some other consequences on the Ed Fund and others that you're probably familiar with. But I don't work in education. I'm not on the education committee. This is very much sort of my personal experience, followed up by a lot of other input that I was hearing. So just my own personal experience at U32 this past school year, about 50% or more of the seniors were not in school at the high school between tech school and early college. 25% of last year's seniors were in early college, and I don't know the percentage, but my guess is more than half of them were at Norwich University. And this was the first time 50% of the senior class was not there. I think the normal range is more in the 20 to 30%. Actually, teacher at U32 on your committee who probably has the numbers more than I do. Norwich is, as you know, a private college receiving public school dollars through the early college program, and the proximity for U32 to Norwich, there's a couple of other schools in this area. Yeah, I think that the proximity of certain high schools to early college locations has a extraordinary impact on those high schools. That's my conjecture. That's my guess. It may also have an undue impact on certain other high schools, but what I've really noticed is just the proximity to Norwich has had a very significant effect on our high school's ability to retain teaching staff and courses and a curriculum that work for seniors in our high school. Our experience was that classes for, sort of the more advanced classes, my kid was a STEM student, so, top physics classes, coding classes, calculus classes were either on the potential chopping block or those teachers that couldn't necessarily retain the teachers for those roles when, my son stayed. He definitely considered early college. Most of his peers went to early college. My son stayed at U32 last year after some serious consideration and waiting to see if they would actually offer the courses that he was planning to take. And I think that it's been a bit of a roller coaster for U32 in being able to retain classes and schedules that can work for the seniors, given the inordinate impact on how many students are using the early college program. My son had several classes of less than 5 students in those classes. In a total class size of 114 seniors, 28 of them were at early college last year. This current year, just so you know, the numbers are lower. It's now 17.5% instead of 25% of the senior class is at early college at U32. As I talked with other parents, legislators, community members, school board members, what I learned was that certain other high schools in various locations around the state are also seeing these inordinate impacts on their particular senior classes and their high schools. There are hidden costs for families to what is described as a free access to a year of college. There are costs There are transportation costs. What I observed is many students in early college who are actually going to a physical location and not doing online through CCV, either need a car or need significant transportation to get to early college, and that there are actually fees that colleges, I don't know how it works in the state college system, but what I've heard from other parents was that it was hard for them to afford early college. And what I've heard is that it is not being used equitably across the families who consider early college, that lower income families are having a harder time accessing the early college program or are utilizing the online CCV option because it has less financial hurdles to access. And many people believe that the online learning for seniors in high school isn't always the best choice, and thus some lower income folks are in an inequitable way sort of being forced into online options as opposed to accessing that in-person learning and a peer group that they're really engaging with. That was not my personal experience, but that's what I heard when I was talking to other parents and administrators. Obviously, many families and students love the cost savings if they really can utilize that year of free college. And it's a very popular program, and I understand that. And in no way do I want to reduce opportunities for students. Obviously, this bill can come across that way. So I guess I just really want to say that out loud. I really hope that this committee, my real hope with this bill is to inspire a look back at the early college program that maybe should have been there in statute as a sunset and a look back, because it's an incredibly impactful program, both pros for students who want access to specific kind of classes, but also some really big cons. So what I'm trying to bring to your attention with this bill are some really big cons for certain high schools and maybe an inequity issue in how the program is administered. And so my hope is that you'll really look at those goals and really, especially the education transformation process. My imagination goes to, if we really had robust regional high schools that can meet all student needs, we wouldn't need early college in the same way that we maybe have or have utilized it to fill gaps. That's what I see is a lot of parents and families, a lot of families and students utilizing early college to fill gaps where they don't feel like they have access to certain kinds of classes or to the level of instruction that they're looking for. I also learned that we double pay for students. This was shocking. My understanding is that so there's a threshold of 5%. If you're 5% of your senior class, if more than 5% of a high school's senior class is in early college, which has been the case ongoing for you two every year, that we're paying both the school district still for those additional students above 5%, as well as the college. And that in this time of really being concerned about the ed fund seems untenable. And so I guess at the very least, I'd really love for you in Ways and Means to look at that and think about whether that is how we should be paying for early college. I've also been told by the chair of Ways and Means that this will become an even larger issue under a foundation formula, the way that's early college payment is structured. And so again, I think just as we look at education transformation, I just have felt really strongly that a discussion about early college and how it fits into this transformation is really important. And so ideally there'd be like a longer phase. I know I didn't write the bill this way. It's not my background. I just sort of went with something simple, but I can only imagine this needs to be phased in over time, any changes to early college, and just want to, again, acknowledge that for the record. Many legislators, including multiple people around this table, seemed to be equally concerned about the equity issues and the damaging impacts on our high schools and their ability to maintain adequate educational opportunities for seniors. And so that's really why I brought this bill forward. Just to be clear, the bill would repeal early college. It would increase dual enrollment vouchers, which seems to be a much more sustainable program with less negative impacts and more equitably accessed by students and families. So increasing dual enrollment from 2 to 4 classes for juniors and seniors would enable students to come out with at least 1 year of college covered. So it's sort of, in my mind, a bit of a trade-off to increase dual enrollment if we're going to reduce early college And then it would create a committee to really consider alternative ways that high schools and state colleges could work. And maybe the bill should be flipped around and you should focus on learning from partners around how state colleges and high schools could work together to continue to provide great educational opportunities for students and integrate the state college system better into our high schools and make that a more seamless transition. So ideally, there'd be some great thinking about other ways we could do that, especially in partnership with an education transformation process. So that's what the bill would do. And I don't feel tied to any of those things except to really relook at this program overall and just appreciate your willingness to even consider it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. We have a question here.
Do you know if kids take a dual enrollment class on campus, does that count towards their vouchers that they already get?
Dual enrollment on which campus? On a college campus?
On a high school?
Well, I don't really know what a dual enrollment.
So I'm teaching dual enrollment. I just taught dual enrollment statistics,
Mhm.
but I don't know if the kids had to use their voucher in order to take that class with me, or whether they did.
We
Still have.
We can
to
get
do
some clarity from legislative
Yeah,
council on that.
I think they did have to fill out the paperwork for CCV and use that credit. I believe that they did.
Right, that's the kind of, in my mind, that's the kind of efficiency that like could re-envision that system to increase opportunities for students and access to those college credits that could be really useful down the road.
Representative Brady, Representative Harple, do you want to add anything since you're both on the bill?
No, I mean, I think you covered it. Like, for me, my biggest concern is that this is decimating our schools. It's decimating our junior and senior culture. The classes are empty. I have not a single class. I'm like the 11th and 12th grade teacher. I have not a single class of more than 5 students this semester. And last semester I had multiple classes of less than 5 students.
You know, I think to me, it's part of a bigger need for us to do kind of sustained oversight of major initiatives, which is the Flexible Pathways Initiative is, and all of the work around Act 77 is really incredible what Vermont has done. And maybe one of the few things we've actually gone pretty far with implementation. There's so many pieces to Act 77 on my wish list for our committee since I got here 5 years ago. It's been time to go kind of back through more carefully what's working and what needs to be updated under Flexible Pathways. I still think it's, in terms of the spirit of the law and where we were going, it's a national model. It's a forward-looking, progressive way of thinking about education, and I think it meets the world that we're in. However, what all those parts of it are and how they're functioning, ideally would be, again, something that we are watching more carefully. Anecdotally, my own experience, I think that there's real scale overlap issues here. And so if it's particularly devastating kind of small, medium height size high schools, it's all part of the conversation around our school sizes and how do we make sure that students have opportunities. And instead it's we're kind of the impact, perhaps not the intent, but the impact of early college has been in some of the places where scale is already sort of teetering as a challenge. It has greatly magnified. The best data I can come by is from VSAC from 2022 of exact numbers of kids from what schools. And so of course you've got to weigh it against the overall size of their schools, but a few outliers jump out immediately. And it's Spalding, Harwood, U32, very high numbers of students. And so, understanding kind of the ecosystem and the impact there, I think is really important. It is a popular program, so taking something away is going to be challenging politically. That's just a reality. But I guess to me, understanding better the whole of Act 77, what is working, and if it's about getting kids more connected to post-secondary opportunities, is it doing that, or is it a sort of pathway for kids who were already on a very college path to get for it to be paid for, which may still be a great state goal and probably one I support, but I'm not sure if out of our K-12 education fund is the place to do it. Like I think we need to do everything we can to bolster our state college system. And this has been an important piece of that. So I want to be careful in how we address it, but I think that as we look very closely at our K-12 funding system and potentially change it dramatically, we should be clear about what we're funding where. And if this is a post-secondary program, and this is really about higher education, maybe, then maybe it's better as a, general fund allocation to the state colleges than an ed fund allocation out of property taxpayers and school budgets.
I got another thing.
So I have lots of thoughts, but I think this is a really important policy issue. If the foundation farm is going forward in any form, like you're naming something, there's all these ancillary issues that we have not. This is one. I'm gonna bring up another one later this week. Like we've got the places, all of these little pieces. But the foundation formula isn't gonna just instantly fix. These are still going to be issues in our system.
I also don't think that needs to necessarily take anything away if in addition to doing this, we are bolstering our dual enrollment. Because we can still offer those, and we're already seeing that, like for those kids that can't go to early college, we can't offer them the classes that they need because there aren't enough kids to fill them. And in a way, it almost feels like this has been a little bit of like union busting because we're letting teachers go because we don't need that many teachers anymore because our students are gone, which kind of flies in the face of contractual and labor issues. And the other thing is that when we lose our juniors and seniors, we're losing sort of that. It's like, I feel like the first time I spoke, I made it sound about my class enrollment, which is not my point at all. Like we're losing our role models. We're making an empty school and we're making it seem like a place where kids should try to get out of as fast as they can.
Representative Long.
So I really appreciate you bringing this to and having this discussion because everything I'm hearing echoes what I'm experiencing and hearing locally. The equity piece is the biggest piece for me right now because not to say all the other parts aren't really important. They are, and they're equally as important. But for me, in my experience, anecdotally, talking to people, because I don't have kids in the high school now anymore. We didn't have access to it when they were there. It isn't equitable. I mean, it just simply isn't accessible for some of our students, and that seems very clear to me. In your experience talking to people as you were developing this legislation, did you hear from folks who are sitting in school districts who are now experiencing districts offering additional dual enrollment on their own to keep children in the classroom instead of going to early college? Because I've been hearing about that, and I'm wondering whether you had heard that too.
I wasn't aware that that was an option because I don't think our school district does that. But it was very interesting to me to learn that some school districts are voluntarily choosing to offer more dual enrollment beyond the statutory two, one junior year and one senior year. So I thought that was interesting. And I am curious and hope that you'll take some testimony on this as if some school districts are doing that in order to address a lot of these issues in a way to, my understanding is like our school district just puts it out to it almost feels like they're encouraging students to leave high school. That is how it feels, how students are being coached and what I witnessed with my child and other students being coached as to how to get the education they wanted their senior year was like, oh, well, we might not be able to give you that kind of schedule. Have you checked out have you checked out early college? Like, go check it out. Norwich is right down the road. That was the sense I got witnessing and hearing about some of the conversations happening between school counselors and children going to their senior year. And to learn that other high schools are trying to discourage the use of early college and voluntarily increase dual vouchers tells me different high school leadership are approaching this differently. And yet, we know enrollment decline is so heavily impacting our ability to teach, particularly high schoolers in certain ways that, again, it seems inequitable that different high schools are approaching this in different ways and sometimes maybe digging themselves bigger holes is one of my concerns.
Probably should switch over to our legislative walkthrough. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for listening. Sorry, I can't stay.
Let's just set it up.
Yes.
Yeah, again, this is 2022 data, so I'm trying to get more updated stuff from VSAC about numbers of kids, discrete kids from high schools, but looking at some of the biggest high schools, and yes, CVU is the biggest, the numbers are not very big, and so I do think this is an important part of the conversation around regional middle and high schools, and so if we are not giving kids opportunities and, you know, there's no doubt there's a lot available to kids at CVU when you have a school that big, and there is a much smaller uptake of early college. There may be other factors at play, as Representative was talking about, but I think that's why this is an important conversation at this moment.
Can I just say one thing related to that and sort of going along with this conversation? That I said about the equitability of the program, the early college, if school districts are presenting the alternative of increased dual enrollment, that from what I've been told is because it is more equitable. More children have access to it and you don't lose the funding of having to unenroll their student. And so right there, we've got a problem.
And when you talk about increased dual enrollment, does that take place within the school building? So these are just, again, we'll wrap it around. I'm like, these are just enhanced offerings within a high school building, which I realize are for college credit, but isn't it really just down to the baseline of we need high schools that can offer a robust program that kids want to stay for?
It is exactly that. And it is literally for the same reasons that we've heard around the room, to keep students in the building so that other courses, AP courses can be accessed. It literally is that. And this smaller and more, let's just face it, rural, it becomes a bigger issue. So it's more reasonable financially to offer more dual enrollment out of your own budget than it is to lose a student to early college for all.
You're on.
At St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. I think you had a fabulous walkthrough already with the sponsor of the bill. Do you want me to share my screen and do a quick walkthrough, or do you want to? Okay.
And quick, it's fine, because I think you already got a lot of information.
So this is H779 as introduced, an act relating to updating the Flexible Pathways Initiative. There's some intent language here. Do you want to go through that, or would you rather skip over it?
Skip over it.
Okay. So starting in section 2 on page 2, we've got some reader assistance headings. This is the early college section. So the first thing that section 2 does is so this is the Flexible Pathways Initiative statute. This is kind of the Flexible Pathways subchapter has this kind of overall statute that applies to the whole program. And then you've got programmatic statutes that follow for dual enrollment, flexible pathways. You added virtual learning. This is where adult education lives. So this is the kind of overall Flexible Pathways Initiative statute. And it lists what is included in flexible pathways, right? So to create opportunities for secondary students to pursue flexible pathways to graduation that include, so we've got work-based learning, virtual learning, dual enrollment, and you'll see that this bill proposes to repeal early college. And that's what section 3 does, is it actually repeals the actual programmatic statutes related to early college. And then section 4, dual enrollment. This is the dual enrollment programmatic statute. You can see 941 was the overall statute. We've now gotten to 944, so you can kind of visualize where we are. And you'll see that the only change here is that an eligible student may enroll in up to 4 dual enrollment courses instead of 2 under current law. And then the applicable change was made here. So this is the place in law that allows the subsection H of section 944 is what allows school districts to offer more than 2 dual enrollment courses. It just, as I forget who said it, it just would come out of the budget instead of the flexible pathways funding. And then section 5 creates the college level programming for high school students working group, which if we just look at the creation of it, is to examine opportunities for high schools in the Vermont State Colleges system to partner on providing college level programming to high school students, including within high school classrooms. And then the working group would be composed of the Secretary of Education.
You don't need to go through.
Okay, great. They would have a deliverable to you all December of this year. And everything would take effect. The intent section, the change to dual enrollment and the working group would take effect July 1, 2026. But the early college program would sunset on July 1, 2027, which essentially means juniors who are participating this year would have next year, and then that would be it.
I have a question for Representative Harper, but with we talked about juniors and seniors being out of the building. Isn't early college just a senior program?
Okay, maybe that's true. I know that juniors enrolled in my dual enrollment course this fall, so that was open to them.
Let's look. Early college.
It's just.
Oh, just for grade 12.
Okay,
So if you are planning to do it, you're a junior and you have planned to do it next year.
right. I mean, maybe the confusion is we also have juniors that graduating junior. So I wonder if they've been, I mean, maybe I'm wrong that there were any juniors, but
Of course, the juniors are probably headed up to CTE as well.
yeah. I mean, I know that, yeah, it's both. Like as you get closer, maybe it's not all this, but as you get closer to the upper grades, it's like less and less students.
Questions for legislative council? Fairly straightforward. All right, so for the committee on this topic, so we have a joint hearing with Commerce later in the week about the higher ed trust fund, which is got a little more money than it used to. One of the issues that we have with early college is that the state college system has sort of built in this revenue into their financial model. And that's one of the challenges. If I could control all the money in the world, I'd say, okay, if we're going to get rid of early college, let's take that same investment, not out of the ed fund, and put it into 802 opportunities and freedom of union, the two programs that allow low income Vermonters to go to either CCD or state colleges tuition free. And so that's kind of why I really want us to understand the higher ed trust fund situation